Welcome to the Cultured Swine Chat. This week we're talking Fashion Month, and I brought my dear friend and fashion editor, Gabriella. Gabriella, hello.
Hi, thank you for having me. I can't wait to get into all the dish.
Yes, this is going to be fantastic. So I figured we have our list, six designers, maybe perhaps some a bit controversial. So let's just get into it. I'm going to have you start, and then we'll just like flip-flop back and forth.
Ooh, oh my God, I was not ready to start. Okay. Um, well, what are your just sort of like general overview feelings from this past fashion month being it was like debut gate?
hmm Yeah, that's true. I mean, I kept thinking I was rewatching the shows before just to kind of like reacquaint myself because you hear kind of all the conversations happening in post and it's good to like soak it in and then revisit. And I just kept thinking of the word clunky. Like there were some great moments, but overall it still feels like people are getting their footing in this like musical chairs era. So clunky was like the best word that I could describe it. What did you think?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, of course, it's not going to be like extremely seamless right off the bat. And I'm sure that like all of these designers have the companies behind them breathing down their neck, like, you need to deliver, you need to fix this economic crisis that we're in fashion. And I
hmm
kind of noticed there was a bit of like, of course, there were aspects of like fantasy and fresh ideas, but also a lot of like commerciality and wearability being woven into the collections. And so I think it just speaks a lot to how fashion is in its most, uh, I guess, imaginative era.
hmm
And
Yeah.
the ingenuity of like the 90s and, peak fashion is really hard to integrate now when everyone is just so business minded.
Yes. I mean, one of the designers you listed, Seán McGirr for Alexander McQueen, that was something I kept thinking about as I was rewatching the show was it's almost near impossible to replicate what McQueen, like the original architect of the brand, did in the 90s in today's context.
Yeah.
So I'm also thinking about that when we're talking about these collections is like, how do these designers sit in a today's context where the economy is much different, shopping is much different, and their like overall view for the brands going forward?
Yeah. So we can talk about McQueen first. I feel like
Perfect.
his Sean's debut was very, um, I guess, controversial. A lot of people didn't like it. I think also there's a lot of people who are just staunchly against McQueen even continuing to be a brand because it's
hmm
like you were saying, it's impossible to capture Lee McQueen's vision and his genius in, basically not even just in modern times, but like just anyone for anyone else to do. And as I was seeing the collection, I thought this one was a lot better and a lot more realized than the first one. Again, maybe a little bit less clunky than the debut, but I noticed like a lot of identifiable trends, and like the I think they're like the butt. What are they called? The bumpster pants coming back.
hmm
I could definitely see that being a big thing. I liked the military jackets a lot, and I thought that there was like more more of a concrete vision for this collection, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Ooh, I've never been a McGear fan since
Yeah,
his debut. I think, like you said, this is the first collection I think I've seen where it, like, I see the McQueen isms coming through,
right.
especially like the work of Sarah Burton. She used to do all of these woven pieces with eyelets that kind of like cut and cinch the body in interesting ways. I think the difference that kept rethinking as I was watching the show is like, it's there, but the quality standards aren't there. Like I always have this specific reference. Sarah Burton did a leather armor for a show. It was spring either 2019 or 2018. And the leather did not buckle, it did not cinch. Like it was so
Yeah.
perfectly fitted to the body that it like that level of detail is just something I'm not seeing come through with Sean's work. And I think that adds to the quality level. Like, if you just look at the photos, the clothing's beautiful. Like, I think in contrast to his previous collections, like this one really did feel like it was starting to understand the McQueen client and the archive, but there's still that level of quality that I'm just not getting. And to a degree, like I do think it's hard in the same respect that we were talking about, like it's hard to replicate 90s McQueen. It's even harder to replicate Sarah Burton's McQueen. Like she just understands fabric and material and the body in such an expert level. And I have to assume that she brought a lot of her team over to Givenchy when she left, which
Yeah.
might have put Seán in maybe a precarious position, but that's something that I'm still looking for from the brand. Perhaps one of the most anticipated, apart from Chanel, debuts of Fashion Month. We saw men's 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I think the anticipation was quite high and it matched that anticipation in men's. There was a large conversation around masculine identity and like how to dress a man in this like modern era. Anderson like historically does a lot of like adds femininity into his work, so it was great to see that on the runway. There were mass hype about how he would reinterpret the bar jacket because that's such a quintessential signifier for the Dior brand. And I think in men's, it was just so flawlessly executed. Women's, I have trepidation in that that term clunky, like it felt like something just wasn't quite matching for me. And I think there were digestible pieces for a Dior client, and I totally saw it. But then there were just moments where, like this cropped bar jacket and cropped skirt, and I kept thinking, like, who is the client for that piece? Because in terms of like a runway show or like a runway piece, that for sure is a commercial item. But it's not quite clear to me who the client is in this new era of Dior.
Yeah, I guess it's still being unwritten. I feel like Maria Grazia's Dior was very, in my opinion, one track mind. Like a lot of the collection just kind of looked the same. It was very like digestible, like rich mom core.
Hmm.
And of course, it had like its flourishes, its beautiful accents. Like I'm not saying that it was bad quality or anything like that, but I felt like Jonathan Anderson's was like it had a point of view that was missing from Dior for a long time because I feel like Dior really just delivered on making like commercial pieces, like really just like client service. Um, and so I can only hope that that continues to get ironed out. I really liked the balance of kind of more like everyday wearable pieces with these like more like fantastical silhouettes. Some of them just look like a breath of fresh air. The like butterfly, the shears, the corsetry. It just felt like a little bit of old Dior and maybe a little bit of like Galliano's fantasy and playing up, um, a totally like unique idea, unique concept, and in our kind of like current minimalist lens that we're in fashion right now. Was it my
Hmm.
favorite ever? Did I gasp? No, but I was happy. I was happy with it. I was happy to see um, just something different from
Right,
Dior. Yeah.
right. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on Jean-Paul Gaultier because this was an incredibly controversial debut as Duran took the helm as creative director and like solid creative director, right? The past few
Yeah.
seasons, he's had guest designers, but Duran is officially the in-house creative director. So, what were your thoughts?
I just would love to know what those board meetings are going to look like at the brand. Now that
Oh,
they've like
yes.
notified him in there, he's pretty much like locked and loaded. At least there's going to be one, like 2 to 4 collections out of him. And like I watched the collection a few times. I try to like find things that I enjoyed
Mhm.
because I like the designer. I think I thought he was a really unique pick, and he kind of does that, you know, shock and like he plays into and he likes to provoke people in a way that Jean-Paul Gaultier did in his time, but Jean-Paul Gaultier was still able to like find beauty in it and
Mhm.
still want to like regale like women's bodies And I just kind of thought that that aspect was missing for me. There was like, you know, a lot of Jean-Paul Gaultier isms, even to like Fifth Element references, but I just was missing that. Uh, like beauty can be done in an ugly way,
Hmm.
but I just didn't see that.
Yeah, I mean, this is one I wrote down a quote because I find it I found it curious to hear this from him and then look at the collection and like, where is that? He said there were sort of, and he's referencing like the historic Gautier wear, like who wears the clothing. There were the sort of people that you don't see during the day, but they flourish in the nightlife, very much in the Gautier spirit. And I just relook at this collection and I'm like, where is that though? Like, where's the nightlife in this? I don't, in the way that I can't be too hard on Anderson or any of these other designers because there's at least wearable pieces in there that feel commercial and that audiences will gravitate to. I struggle really finding those pieces in any of his looks. Like,
Yeah,
even the trousers, which could have just been like great, well tailored pieces have these kind of weird cutouts at the hips that I'm like, that's such a very specific person that's wearing that, which is fine if you have other commercial pieces, but because it's lacking that, it just, I feel kind of lost.
yeah, I liked the like tattoo, the black tattoo top. I thought that was like an interesting motif that he should have leaned into more. I could kind of see, you know, his idea for the people coming out of night
Mhm.
gravitating towards those pieces. But generally, I even struggled to imagine these pieces in like a movie or in a fashion campaign that's really out there and wacky. I just kind of saw like, you know, Tumblr edgelord in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I am generally open to people's ideas and like I like weird stuff, but I don't know. I just kind of feel like he wanted to lean into making a meme out of everything more than
Mhm.
telling an actual story.
Mhm.
And does everything need to tell a story? I think so, but not everybody thinks that way. And so if you're gonna just kind of do something random for the sake of like nihilist chaos, I would at least like there to be just a little bit of reverence for the brand's history because it really is just one of those like treasured and beloved brands for more underground and alternative people and ways of thinking. And I just
Mhm.
thought that was missing completely.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you brought up The Fifth Element. That's one of my favorite movies. And sometimes I forget that yeah, Jean-Paul Gaultier did all of the costume work for that. And now looking back at the collection, I'm like, oh, I totally see some of these pieces in like a fantasy, sci-fi, futuristic, but also like old traditional film. Like I see it, but I don't know.
Maybe the Netflix reboot, you
Yeah,
know,
the
it just
Netflix reboot. Well, it's funny because last night we were watching, so I was with a friend and we are watching Confessions of a Shopaholic, and they
yeah.
thought that the film had come out recently because Netflix like re-upped it. And it took them a minute. They were like, "Oh yeah, the grain on like it's really interesting. They're using this grain and like how everything's composed." And I was like, "Well, it was shot in 2009. Like this totally fits the vibe that was happening in this era." And they were like, "Oh shoot!" Like we thought. Well, it ended up turning into this discussion of like what happened to film like that because it's almost like the 90s leading into the beginning of the 2000s. That's the Fifth Element era too.
Yeah.
And that type of film and like the campiness, the like unseriousness, even when it's action packed, like you don't see that in a lot of film these days. So it's very curious to me where Duran thinks the brand can go in that direction if like the zeitgeist isn't moving there. And sometimes like that's fine, right? Like it's important to also be an innovator and boundary pusher as much as it is to follow what your consumers are going to buy. Um, but this one I find a bit of
Yeah.
a stretch.
I would say just in general, everybody's very serious right now. Like there's a serious undertone, even if you're making like minimalist tailored pieces or making crazy stuff like Duran is, there's just like this essence of I take myself very seriously and I take my work very seriously. And I don't see like even in these like fucking screen printed naked suits, I don't see like a carefreeness that feels like fluid and authentic.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be, I'm doing something crazy just for the hell of it, just for shits and giggles. But it still feels very methodical and yeah, just a little serious. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know if you get that vibe too, but I it doesn't feel very it's not fun.
Right.
It's not
Yes.
fun.
I'm of two minds of it because that sentiment seems to be what's coming from the fashion like media cycle too. A lot of the people that we respect, like Vanessa Friedman or Rachel Tajin, like all of these like historic critics had kind of made that same sentiment. I'm
Mhm.
almost of the mindset of like, this is quite unprecedented times. And yes, there needs to be moments of fun, but when we talk about corporations and businesses, like the economy has never been so precious as it is right now, and not just the American economy, but the global economy. Trade tensions are high, tariffs are still in effect. So I almost went, I think, into Fashion Month this season with that mindset of like, you know, and I'll use like Daniela Kalmeyer, who showed at New York Fashion Week as an example, where I spoke to her after her show, and we were specifically talking about footwear. And she made this comment where she's like, everyone has 300 pairs of shoes in their closet, but don't we only wear the same four pair? And I was like, that's so true, right? Like, I love fashion and I love having very unique pieces, but more often than not, I'm gravitating back towards the same three pieces. And it's actually really hard to design unique silhouettes that feel new and relevant, but also have longevity to them. And I think that's what designers are stumbling with right now because of the economy is like, how can I make something that feels really simple and elegant that I know people are going to buy? Because the global mindset for consumption right now is not frivolous spending. It's like a slowdown. It's a, where am I investing my money? We can get into another conversation too, like the piece I just wrote about gold, where, gold prices are really high. Gold is often a material that you're not just buying frivolously, you're investing in. And for it to jump at the price that it is, which is kind of unattainable for the average person, which is why I say like only boomers can really afford gold right now. It's that idea of like it's just really hard in the economy. And it's not just from a consumption standpoint. I'm also thinking like designers buying materials and like how are they shipping those materials into the US given the tariffs and import
Yeah.
costs? It's yeah, there's just a lot happening.
Everything along the supply chain from the brands to the consumers just feels very precious.
Hmm.
And it's hard to, I guess, want to experiment and want to play, and everything is really focused on the bottom line from a business standpoint. But I think as somebody, like, fashion has an audience that doesn't always buy everything off the collection, but wants to be inspired. And I think I would just like to see a little bit more of that. If you are going to have a somber collection or if you're going to be very serious and buttoned up, then channel that into saying something about the times that we're in.
Hmm.
Make it evocative because in 20 years, people are going to look back on this time in fashion and it's going to say a lot about our society. Um, and if it's just, oh, yeah, we're just, trying to revive these brands to make our shareholders happy, I think that's going to be very bleak.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Bleak
Well,
legacy.
I think this is a good point to segue into Gucci
Yeah.
because of all the brands that I think had a debut, Gucci was the only one that felt, maybe apart from Chanel, and we can get into that when we get there, was the only one that felt like it was building something for its audience and was truly less about the clothing and more about who they are in this new era with Demna at the helm, post Balenciaga, and like this world that he's like kind of bringing along with him. What were your thoughts Did you watch the film? I'm sure you did, but I'm just curious, like what you thought of the whole thing.
I think everyone was a little bit trepidatious when they heard that Demna was going to Gucci, and I think I was a little bit too. But I generally enjoyed it. I think the world building was very clear. I liked the pieces. I liked their, kind of irreverent, like archetypal, uh, like marketing that they did for it. And I can see people wearing it. I think there's like sexy Gucci in there. I think there's like, dramatic Italian heiress Gucci in there. It does feel very intentional and a little bit like typecast Gucci, but I was happy to see that after the stumble of Sabato in these past few years. And I think you could definitely tell like this is supposed to be Kering's shining star to
Mhm.
lead them through this financial crisis that they've been in. But I also thought there was a good balance of you know clothing for people to enjoy, even if they aren't going to be buying the entire collection. I'm excited to see like what the actual debut runway looks like and where it continues to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, as you know, I'm a devout Demna fan.
Yes, you are.
Stan.
Yeah, you
And
are.
I
Yeah.
I will say at some point during his Balenciaga era, it did feel like there was less emphasis on his like world building and perhaps not even emphasis on the clothes, and everything felt a bit like, wait, why are you showing this here now? And I think that's partially because he is a designer that builds a full 360 view of what his Balenciaga, and now in this case Gucci, looks like. So I think my question for him going forward is like, can he keep up this domino effect that he's built, or at some point will it plateau?
Mm.
Because I've seen him plateau a bit at Balenciaga.
Yeah. I also kind of got the sense that he's not going to be going into Gucci and completely rewriting the script and making it his vision in the same way that he did with Balenciaga, because it was a little bit of a blank canvas when he went in. Like he leaned into sort of the street style that it was starting to become in the mid aughts, and really just like took it to his world and
Mhm.
then some. I don't think he's going to be able to do that at Gucci. I feel like there's a lot of constraints there, and being such a huge like company backed brand. And also I feel like Gucci was like, especially with like Alessandro, was in the past like 10 years or so, was sort of like a peak consumerist brand.
Mhm.
um you know Everyone wanted those Gucci buckle belts, all of the I was going to say TikTok, but that wasn't even a thing then. All of the Instagram, YouTube influencers were decked out in, the Gucci print. But then there was also this really like refined mid-century aspect to the brand as well. So it kind of had a good balance of like leaning into the aspirational customer and also, connecting to its roots as a very like glamorous brand. Um, so I feel like there might be some kind of resurgence of that at Gucci while still, you know, I mean, I don't know where Demna is going to take it, but I can imagine that they want to be that brand again.
Okay, so Balenciaga.
Yeah.
This was obviously Pierpaolo's debut. I heard some mixed reviews on it. What
Mm-hmm.
what was your like initial take?
I liked it. I guess I'm just easy to please this season. I don't know, but I enjoyed it. I like to see the Pierpaolo isms of like really interesting and beautiful color combinations and very grand and like ultra feminine silhouettes. And I thought it was interesting to see a little bit of Demna isms weaved in there too, with like the glasses and
Mhm.
like a very strong roster of accessories. I honestly was kind of just like I didn't really know what to expect from this debut, because like we were talking about earlier, Demna's Balenciaga are essentially one and the same. I mean, he really just kind of like made that his own brand.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, okay, how is Pierpaolo, somebody who's so different, going to uh, kind of rewrite the brand narrative and take it, propel it forward in a different way that is a little bit less like, I don't want to say gaudy,
Hmm.
but that. And it
Yeah.
worked sometimes. Like I didn't mind. Now we're going back into talking about Demna, but I didn't mind. I didn't mind the kookiness. I didn't mind the like trolling people aspect of the brand at times. But I think a lot of people were starting to reminisce on uh, Balenciaga's old refined days, and I see that starting to happen. But it's just such a it would be such a stark stray to overnight go into that. So I appreciated that he kind of at least tried to make it like a seamless transition.
Hmm.
Um, was I like on the floor? No, but I thought it was pretty, and I thought he did a nice job.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that sentiment of like refined elegance. It seems like that's where people are wanting fashion to go. I keep hearing that come up again and again. And Pierpaolo's known for that. So
Yeah,
then to have this debut, and that's why I said I was hearing mixed reviews, and there was a strong sentiment from like top fashion editors that it just felt like a flop to them. And I was like, well, wait, isn't this what you wanted, right? Like you wanted the refined elegance, and that's exactly what he's
right.
giving you with the traditional balances of Cristobal's couture collection and the Demna-isms. Like it, I think in the beginning too, as you like rewatch the show, which we should talk about at some point. Shows need to just cut the number of looks, bring it down to 20.
Oh
That's
my
all I
god.
need. Distill it. There were too many looks in this collection because it got to a point where after the first 10, which I thought were incredibly strong and married everything about we know from his work and from Cristobal's couture,
Yeah,
it started feeling a bit too commercial, which is like a weird thing to say in regards to his designs. But it was just a bit almost too mundane. And I was like, okay, like if we could have cut that middle section out and just stuck with the beginning and the end, I think it would have been the perfect transition from Demna's very loud, monstrous work to something that's much more softer and elegant and easily to digest in the eye.
I
Yeah.
agree. Actually, like I'm looking at the pieces now again, um, and I guess I'm wondering like, do we need this?
Mhm.
Do we, is there a need for Balenciaga
Hmm.
when you have, brands like, Givenchy and Dior doing these kind of, you know, grand silhouettes and interesting fabric treatments and pushing, elegance and refinement into a more like tactile place that's interesting and different. I'm like, what do we need Balenciaga?
So we're talking about Chanel. I
Yeah.
want to zoom out for a second and just get an overall check from you of what you thought of the collection as a whole.
Oh my god, yeah, I went on my tangent because my feelings about I really liked it. I did. It was nice to see um the like iconic Chanel motifs, like camellia, the tweed, the wheat, um, be interpreted in new ways because I feel like that was missing from Chanel in the past however many years. I think he did a really great job of um, seizing what the Chanel client wants and also making it interesting for a broader fashion audience. Um, yeah, it was good for me. I hate that I'm like so positive about everything um, to say, but I thought it was very refreshing to see Chanel being taken in that direction because I
Mhm.
feel like they were very zeroed in on just capitalizing off of the Chanel legacy for so long. So it's nice to see. Obviously, that's still going to be there, but there were unique aspects to it that felt like the designer was really inspired by Chanel and wanting to do something different.
Mhm. I mean, I think what a way to end Fashion Month and this conversation. I have no notes. I
Yeah.
think that of all the collection, like all the new designer debuts, Matthieu really nailed it on the head of exactly what you said, capturing house codes and also adding his own modern touches. Like
Yes.
we talked about boyish silhouettes with Dior. Chanel is the pinnacle of a boyish silhouette. Like Coco herself is the person who kind of invented it for women's wear and like pushed it into a sphere of luxury clothing. And to see it here, but also see like one of the topics that kept coming up in fashion circles was like there's no designers out here who are designing for women's bodies. Sir Burton certainly knew how to do it. Louis Trotter knew how to do it at Bottega, but there were no male designers that knew how to design for a woman's body. Of all the designers, I could say I think Matthieu came the closest to understanding how clothes fit and flow in a real context because you watch the collection in real life and there's not a single note about the clothes. Like all of them look beautiful and effortless and flow. And it makes the models look powerful and in charge and like the center of their own universes, which is ironic because you're sitting in this like planetary setting. So yeah, I thought what a way to end Fashion Month. Wow. Gabriella,
Yeah.
this has been great. Thank you so much for
Yes.
sitting with me and talking fashion.
Thank you. It was so
I
much
hope
fun.
to be doing more of these because I think like this is the only way that I will ever do video format. Because I
Yeah.
can't. I've tried doing it on my own and I just can't. I can't do
I mean,
it.
I don't blame you. I've never made a TikTok in my life, and it'll probably remain that way. So,
Well, we will chat soon and until next time.
till next time, bye.
Bye.